welcome back to my channel. My name is Trisha, and today on the Aspiring Home Cook, I'm going to share with you some kitchen basics. We're going to look at how I make my chapatis or Indian flatbread, also known as rotis. And this is the very basic version of flatbread that you'll find in most Indian households. We make this very regularly, and once you get the hang of it, in a few attempts, you'll be amazed at how easy it is to make these at home. You can use these for wraps, you can serve this with your curries or your Indian style vegetable or meat dishes. It goes so well with a number of things. Now, apart from the basic chapatis, I'm also going to show you a plain paratha recipe. Now, this is not a stuffed paratha. It's layered with some beautiful clarified butter or ghee. We typically serve this for morning breakfast alongside an omelette or a fried egg or something like that. So again, these are very simple, very basic recipes. A lot of you will already know how to do this. I've decided to make this video for the benefit of those who don't know how easy it is. Once you've got these basics in place, the variations that you can actually put together are endless. And I'm going to show you some of those in the next few days as well. Alright, so before we move on to the kitchen, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel, and once you do, don't forget to click that little bell icon right next to it so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. So let's go on over to the kitchen and look at how to put these chapatis and plain parathas together. Now the first step is making your dough or your atta for the chapatis and the parathas. Both of them have the same base atta recipe. Now over here I've got about a cup of whole wheat flour. To this I'm adding somewhere between half to 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. You can add salt to suit your taste. And I'm just going to mix both of these ingredients together. Now I'm going to make a little well in the center and start adding a little water to this mix. Slowly you're going to work that flour in. And adding some water gradually, you're going to need all of this together to form a nice soft dough. You don't want it to be too soft that it's sticky and unmanageable, but you don't want it to be very stiff as well. So gradually add enough water to get you to a soft dough stage. Now typically I use somewhere between 3/4 of a cup of water to 1 cup of water. The amount of water you need to use will depend on the flour that you're using. So go by your feel of the atta while deciding on how much water you need to add. After kneading for a few minutes, you're going to end up with a dough that looks like this. Now, while everything has come together, you still need to knead that dough a little. I usually knead this for about 2 to 3 minutes really well once everything has come together. And you will notice the more you knead the dough, the better it feels to the touch. Now this dough is very forgiving. At this stage, if you think it's too soft and too sticky and really isn't holding its own, add a little dry flour and knead it in. On the other hand, if it's too stiff and really tight, you're going to add a little water and work that into the dough. Alright, so once your dough looks like this, I'm just going to smoothen it into a nice dough and flatten it to a disc like this. Now the next stage is leaving your dough to rest. This is an extremely important stage. What you're doing is letting that gluten relax. So I'm going to set this aside for a minimum of 15 minutes before I proceed. Now if you're making this ahead of time, you can refrigerate it at this stage and use it as and when you need to. Once the dough has had time to rest, I'm just very lightly going to knead it for a couple of seconds like you can see here. Very lightly, nothing too intense. And you're going to portion this out into about 5 portions. That's how much this yields. Now, of course, you can alter the size of the portions depending on the size of chapati or parathas you're after. Once you've got your portions made, roll them into little balls like you see here. And we're going to cover the dough while we roll our chapatis. Working with one portion of dough at a time, I'm going to start off by showing you how I make my chapatis. I flatten that very lightly into a little disc and dip it in a little dry flour. I'm going to make sure that that sphere is lightly covered in dry flour, and I've got some flour on my surface as well. I'm going to lightly flour the rolling pin so that nothing sticks to any of the surfaces. And using very slight pressure, you're going to roll this into a nice flatbread. Now you will get to rolling it into round shapes with a little practice, and the shape really isn't too important. So try your best to get it as evenly flat as possible and as round as you can manage. Remember to use even pressure on the sides. You can sprinkle a little more flour if you find it sticking to any of the surfaces. Lift it off the surface every once in a while so that it doesn't stick to the surface. And once you're happy with the thickness, we're going to take it over to the stovetop and fry it off. We typically use a heavy tawa. You can use a cast iron pan like I am here. If you don't have either of those, you can use a non-stick pan in a pinch as well. Gently place your chapati on a hot pan and you're carefully just going to move it every few seconds, a couple of times, just to make sure that the heat is evenly distributed. Now, if you're not comfortable using your hands, be very careful, use the spatula instead. And once you see little bubbles or air pockets building like this, you know that your chapati is ready to be flipped for the first time. Like you can see, you should have small light brown spots on the other side. Now, at this point, I like to apply a little pressure towards the edge of the chapatis just so that they make contact with the pan and they cook up. Now, what you can see me do here is lightly press down using the side of the spatula. And once those bubbles appear on that side, I'm going to flip it over. Again, I'm using pressure on the edges to help that little air pocket develop and my chapati puff up. Now at this point, you can continue cooking till it's nice and speckled with brown spots, and then it's ready to serve. I'm going to use a few drops of ghee over here. This adds immense flavor to your chapatis. Flip it over, let that cook off for about 10 seconds, just to let that ghee warm up. And I'm going to do the same thing on the second side. Just a few drops of ghee. Spread that using the back of the spatula. And I'm going to flip that over to let that ghee cook off just a little bit. Again, like I said, about 10 seconds should do you fine. And once you see that you've got a few brown spots like this right throughout your chapati, you know it's ready and it's ready to be taken off the pan. Now to make our parathas, we're going to follow the same process that we did while making our chapatis. We're going to flatten that little ball of dough, lightly flour it on all sides, flour our surfaces, and roll it into a nice flat chapati. Now this is where your chapati will now become a paratha. I'm going to drizzle a few drops of ghee and spread that all over the chapati. Then I'm going to fold that chapati down in thirds and pat that down to make sure that those edges stick. I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction and fold it into thirds, and what you'll be left with is a little square-ish parcel like this. At this point, you're going to flour that little parcel again and flour your surfaces lightly, and you're going to start rolling, applying very gentle pressure until you end up with a nice square or rectangle sort of shape that's nice and flat and even, not very thick, not very thin at the same time. You want to make sure that the edges are as flat as the center. Make sure that they're not too thick at the borders. Keep turning your dough to make sure you get even edges. And my paratha is ready to be fried now. Like we did before, we're starting off with a hot pan and you're gently going to place your paratha on the pan. Now, like you did with the chapati, after a few seconds, you're going to move that paratha around just to ensure even heat distribution. And once you see little air pockets develop, like you can see right here, you're going to gently flip your paratha over. Gently apply a little pressure on the edges of your paratha to make sure that the edges cook evenly too. And once you see that air pocket building, you're going to flip over. Drizzle with a few drops of ghee. Spread that onto your paratha and let that ghee cook off for a few seconds. Now, if you feel that there's any part of the edge of the chapati or paratha that hasn't fried off too well, just move that towards the center of the pan, apply a little pressure with your spatula and let that cook off. I'm going to drizzle a little more ghee on this side as well. Spread that around and cook that off for a few seconds. And like you can see here, my paratha has puffed up beautifully. It's got lovely color on it on both sides and the edges are well cooked. I know my paratha is now ready to be taken off the pan. So guys, that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with family and friends. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to see you really soon with another delicious recipe. So till then, take care. Bye.